right, so for our next session, Animals in Permanent Supportive Housing in Spain, special guests from Barcelona will announce the implementation of a national program to support vulnerable populations and their animals. Researcher, I apologize in advance, researcher Jaume Fatjó will discuss thank you. Thanks. We'll discuss the second part of his study being conducted in partnership with FAADA. His research focuses on people in vulnerable situations with animals. FAADA team members Thaïs and Noe will talk about the progress of their initial program in Barcelona and the subsidy from the Ministry of Social Services, allowing the program to now be expanded and implemented across all of Spain. So to help me moderate this session, I would like to invite My Dog is My Home's current board chair, Carol Sainthilaire, to join me.
Hola, hola, hello. Thank you, Christine. I've been looking forward to this plenary for the entire conference because there's just so much to learn about what's going on in Spain. And I think one of the things My Dog is My Home does best is really reach across boundaries. And in this particular session, those boundaries are professional, discipline, geographic borders, and language. So a note to our audience, this plenary is both in English and in Spanish, not by simultaneous translation, but by consecutive translation. Consecutive translation means that the interpretation will occur after the speaker pauses. So
Carol, sorry, your audio is a little bit far away.
Yeah, it is. All right. I'm on my phone because the Wi-Fi at work is a little difficult. How's this now?
You might need to just hold your phone up like this.
Totally fine. All right, great. Is this better?
Maybe a tiny bit. Do you have headphones with an external mic?
Yeah, let me just join the computer audio and call it a day.
Is this better?
Much better.
Yeah. Awesome.
Much better.
Right. Yeah. There we go. Ok, gracias, Christine. Para los españoles, me perdonan con el español. No he estado practicando mucho, pero he estado esperando esta plenaria durante toda la conferencia porque hay mucho que aprender de lo que está pasando en España. Creo que una de las cosas que My Dog is My Home hace súper bien es traspasar las fronteras. En esta sesión en particular, esas fronteras son la disciplina profesional, las fronteras geográficas y el idioma. Así que una nota para la audiencia española, esta plenaria va a ser en inglés y en español. No por traducción simultánea, sino por traducción consecutiva. Con eso, Jaume, usted me parece que me va a ayudar. La traducción consecutiva significa que la interpretación ocurrirá después de que el presentador pause. So, now I have the pleasure of introducing our guests. Jaume Fatjó, Ríos, Noe Terrassa, Thaïs Sanchez. Dígamelo, ¿cómo lo tengo que decir?
No, that's fine. That's totally okay. Yeah, that's totally okay. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to do our introduction. Our speakers know who they are. So I'm going to do this part in only English. Jaume has a degree in veterinary medicine and a PhD from the Autonomous University of Barcelona. He is a diplomat of the European College of Animal Welfare and Behavioral Medicine. Since 2010, he has been an assistant professor at the Department of Psychiatry and Forensic Medicine at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. In 2012, he became the director of the Chair Affinity Foundation, Animals and Health at the Department of Psychiatry and Forensic Medicine. He's the co-founder of Ethometrics Limited. His research interests are focused on understanding the relationship between people and animals, the development of tools to assess canine and feline behavior, as well as the comparative study of human psychiatric disorders and problems of animal behavior. Noe is the companion animal advisor at FAADA in Barcelona, Spain. Noe has been an animal rights activist for 30 years and is currently responsible for the #Mejores Amigos project. She has a background in humanities and anthrozoology and serves as a technician in the area of domestic animals for the FAADA Foundation. In this role, she provides technical assistance and manages animal abuse complaints and campaign. The #Mejores Amigos project focuses on the interspecies bond between people and animals in vulnerable situations. And last but not least, Thaïs is a volunteer of FAADA's Mejores Amigos project in Barcelona. She has more than 17 years of experience in fundraising, communication, and awareness raising in the third sector, the equivalent of the nonprofit sector in the United States. She believes in social transformation as a driver for change and improvement of our environment. She works for equal opportunities and social justice from an anti-speciesist perspective. So, bienvenidos a todos y estamos muy felices de estar con ustedes y de aprender de lo que nos van a decir. Así que se lo dejo a ustedes.
Well, thank you very much, Carol. Well, the way that, first of all, on behalf of Noe and Thaïs, well, we would like to thank the organization for inviting us, for allowing us to be here with you again and sharing, many of the things that we have been doing over the last couple of years together. Well, the way that we have organized the session is that I will give the floor. I will hand over to Noe and Thaïs for they will start explaining you the project, because I will say that they are the real sort of people that had to be awarded, that had to be recognized today, because they have I will say they have a story of success in not just in Barcelona, because now also in Spain. They have been so, they are not going to say that, so I'm going to say that the program that they have developed in Barcelona, it's been so successful that now they are getting offers from many other areas in Spain, and they are expanding the project. So it's really successful. So they will start, the way that we have organized the session, I was saying, is that they will start explaining to you the project, what they have done and how they are moving forward. And then after that, I will provide you with a summary of the results of the scientific study that we have been conducting with them over the past 2 years, just to support them. So our role here, the university, is to support them with data, because that was the starting point of the relationship. In one conversation with Noe some years ago, she said to us, "Oh, it will be very good if you could help us to get some data that we can use to persuade people that this is real and that animals actually are a source of social support for people experiencing homelessness." And this has been our role since then. I mean, to support them, to make the project available in more areas in Spain. So I will start by handing over to Thaïs and Noe, so they will explain to you the project, and as I said, I will then tell you a little bit about the research that we have conducted.
Okay, thank you, Jaume. Hi everyone. We are delighted to participate again in this important and necessary space. Thank you for inviting us to share the Mejores Amigos Best Friend project with you. Thanks to Christine and her team for always counting on us and for the good organization of this meeting. We are going to present in English, and we apologize in advance for our English level. But Jaume will help us with the translation, and Carol also, of the questions and answers at the end of the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Sí, pero no, ahora, aquí, ¿no? Okay. Please, so sorry, eh? We have some technical issues of last minute. Es que no me deja. ¿Aquí no deja? No.
I si veus al darrere i obres des d'allà? No, no.
So sorry. Es que no me han deixat aquí. Em deixa la finestra.
Doncs, Jaume, pots compartir?
Yes.
Well-
So sorry, eh? We tried
No deja
before,
compartir.
but I don't know why now it's not possible. No entenc.
Let me see, because I need to find now your presentation. I think that I have it,
Okay.
but did you send it to me or?
By mail.
Yes, by mail, but yes.
También si quieren me la pueden mandar a mí, a Carol, y la puedo poner.
Vale, pues te la mando. So sorry, eh?
Sí, no deja compartir, ¿no?
No sé por qué. Carol.
Okay, what we can do, because then we don't. If you want, you can send Thaïs. You can send the presentation to Carol, and while you are doing that, if you want, I can start with the study then. So then I will give you some time to do that with Carol, and then you are ready to go when I finish. Is that okay? It makes sense.
Carol. Yes, Carol.
Sí,
I
perfecto,
just
empiece usted
sent,
y en lo que allá me llegó.
Exactly. That, Carol, that gives you, eso os da un poquito más de tiempo para ver lo que hacéis. Okay?
Vale.
Vale. Ahora, perfecto.
Okay, well, this is funny because this is let me tell you something. This is funny because when we were preparing the session some days ago, we were saying, okay, well, our first idea was that I was going first, and then they were explaining the project. Finally, we decided to go the other way around, and finally, as you can see, we ended with the first plan. I mean, we are forced to do the first plan, but anyway. So I'm going to start showing with you the results. Sorry? Okay. I think that someone is unmuted. Now, okay. Okay, so then, as I was saying, I'm going to present the two studies that we have been conducting during the last couple of years. And basically what I'm going to tell you is, first of all, why we conducted the study, what was the reason for the study, how we did it. Well, so I will give you a very brief description of the methodology. And then I will move into the results and the implications, and finally I will come up with a few conclusions. Well, basically, as you can imagine, the reason for doing all these is that, as you know, even in the literature, is recognized that not allowing pets into shelters or certain kinds of accommodations is acknowledged as one of the main structural barriers for shelter access, and having a non-pet policy is that. I mean, it prevents many people for having access to places like not just shelters but also to hospital and health services. So that was the starting point, because although dogs are considered by most people as family members and as a source of social support, we see that not just in the area of people experiencing homelessness, but also in other areas, we can see that the human-animal bond is not fully recognized, at least by one part of our society. And we were predicting, so when someone says, oh, why someone will actually reject having access to a shelter or to accommodation because of an animal? Well, our prediction was based on many theoretical models. I'm going to share with you one that I'm sure that you know this very well, the Roosevelt model to explain interpersonal relationships. Basically, what Roosevelt's models say is that the commitment that you show about one particular relationship, so is how far you are willing to go to defend that relationship, is, let's say, the result of the interaction between 3 dimensions or 3 different aspects. One is satisfaction, and within this satisfaction, the main element is emotional closeness, is how good is that relationship in providing you with social support. Also, the investment that you have put in that relationship, and when we talk about investment, obviously this is not financial investment. This is basically your investment as a life project, and then also the alternatives that are available. So, in other words, if one relationship is not very satisfying, you are not getting a lot of support from one particular relationship, and you have a lot of alternatives, that probably will result in a low level of commitment, and the opposite, and vice versa. So basically, our prediction was that, according to this model, people experiencing homelessness that usually have very, very compromised social networks, and they are getting a lot of satisfaction from that particular relationship, they will not be willing to trade off that particular relationship for gaining access to shelter, for gaining shelter access, or access to accommodation, or access to health services. So that was our prediction. And this was the starting point of the study. We were aiming to prove the value of dogs as sources of social support for people experiencing homelessness in the area of Barcelona, and also to take that analysis a little bit further to support the idea, to fully support the idea that this relationship and these individuals, these dogs, mainly dogs, but also cats, should be fully recognized as non-traditional family members, if you want to say it that way. So that was the starting point of the project. In our group, we have been working on the value of companion animals as sources of social support for a long time now. This is an example of the things that we have been looking at. This is a study that we published back in 2021. And basically, this is based on two samples. One is a representative sample of Spanish people living with dogs, and the other one is a convenient sample that we collected during the lockdown of COVID-19 back in 2020, and then that helped us to analyze how valuable were dogs for people in general, but also in times of a crisis. And not only that, obviously, as you can imagine, we proved that dogs were very, very important for people during that period, and in general, when they face difficult situations. But also, we started to focus our analysis on the different dimensions that characterize the social support that people get from their companion animals. Because usually we say, yes, dogs and cats are a very good source of social support, but we don't specify in which terms people get actually support from their animals. And basically, long story short, we identify 5 dimensions, five benefits that people get from their dogs in terms of social support. One is availability, the possibility to share and to do things together, share activities. The fact that the animal becomes a source of self-disclosure, the opportunity to have physical contact, and also, and this is very, very important, for the populations that we are trying to understand better is that the dog offers people opportunities for caregiving. And just to give you a very quick example of this, in a recent study that we are conducting together with colleagues from the University of California and the University of London, and this is basically based on a population from the US and the UK, we were trying to further analyze the value of dogs as sources of social support. And in a population of more than 200 people, we identified, so 10 people in an open interview told us that at some point the dog prevented them from committing suicide. And we were expecting that could be mainly related to the fact that the dog is already there, that the dog offers kind of emotional support in that moment of crisis. But the thing that all of them, and this was not a trend, all people who said, well, I had this moment in my life and my dog stopped me from going ahead with that. In all cases, they said that the main reason for not doing it is because they felt responsible for the dog. So they said, well, if I go now, who is going to take care of the animal? And that was the main reason for them, to stay. And so going back to what I was saying, you can say that most people, and this is again based on an overall sample, say that their dogs help them to get through difficult times, that they get comfort opportunities for having physical contact. They tell things to their dogs that they don't share with anyone else. And usually other groups, one group in the UK, further explored that and found that the kind of messages that people share with their dogs are actually things related to moments of anxiety and depression. So people tend to go to their dogs as confidants in moments of real trouble. And as I said, also, the dog is for the person an opportunity to express that caregiving behavior. So this altogether, this actually justifies that dogs could be considered an example of fictive kinship. So if you think about from a functional point of view, they tick all the boxes to be characterized as full members of the family. And this was sort of the background and the reason for us to go ahead and try to conduct this study together with our colleagues from FAADA. How we did it, again, I'm not going into the details of methodology, but basically, since we started, we have targeted two groups of people. We have two samples of people, and this is you are all familiar with this, but this is the ethos classification provided by FAADA in Europe to classify the different degrees of homelessness. And we focused our attention in the two first categories. In a list of 13 categories, the two main categories, the two top ones, so the people that are more severely affected are people experiencing rooflessness. These are categories 1 and 2. And then people experiencing homelessness that go from category 3 to category 6. So these are the two samples that we have been analyzing over the last couple of years. People experience rooflessness. We started with these ones, and now we are currently analyzing people experiencing homelessness. As my colleagues will tell you later, this is kind of a study that is included in a big project, in a broader project called Millors Amics in Catalan, is best friends, to provide support to people experiencing homelessness in Barcelona, and now expanding to other areas of our country. Okay, if we think about the first population, people experiencing rooflessness, just to give you an idea, we already mentioned this last year, but we have more or less 1,000 people experiencing homelessness in the city of Barcelona. From them, more or less 80 live with at least one dog. And that was the sample that we approached in the first study. Both Thaïs and Noe were able to contact all of them, and they were able to interview 30 of them, which is very, very, I will say this is very, very good in terms of how difficult, if you think about how difficult it is to, first of all, locate these people, find a moment to talk to them, persuade them to participate. So it was really, really, they were really, really successful in collecting a sample of 30 people from this population. And that represents more or less very close to 40% of the overall population, according to official figures. So basically, we conducted an interview using a modified version of the Hutu scale, which is, as you know, which was designed to identify which individuals available in the social network of the person are approached by the person in different situations, or to gain different aspects of social support. Just to give you an idea, this is the kind of questions that you include in the protocol. Which individuals do you like to share your time with? Which individuals do you value most for advice? Which individuals can you always count on? Which individuals do you hug more often, or do you kiss more often? Which individuals do you like to care for the most? And the person participating in the study, they have to tell you who is available to fulfill these dimensions or these functions of social support, and also how they rank the different members of the social support according to their importance. So that was basically how we collected the information. And this is what we found. If we first have a look at the first population, people experiencing rooflessness, well, the first thing that is actually shocking is that the average depth of the social network for these people was 1.4 individuals. That means that on average, they only had 1.4 individuals to go to get social support. But this is what makes the result particularly shocking, that is including the dog. So what this indicates is that these people, they have a very compromised, very, very compromised social network, as you can imagine. Now, if we include the second group, if now we compare the results that we obtained from the first sample, people experiencing rooflessness, with now the new sample that we are studying, people experiencing homelessness, they still have a very low quality shelter. So they belong to those categories within the ethos classification of not having a good quality home, but they have some sort of shelter access. And if you look at this second population, things actually don't improve a lot, because then you go from 1.4 average depth of social network to 1.7. So it is slightly better, but not a lot. So it's just slightly better than the other population. Okay, this is the data in terms of the average depth of social network, but for all the dimensions that I mentioned before of social support, or all the items related to social support that I mentioned previously. And in the second column here, you have the percentage of people that ranked their dog first. And as you can see, who provides you with more companionship? 90% of participants said the dog was the main source of companionship. Who do you hug more often? Again, 93% ranked the dog first. But what is very important, I'm not going to obviously comment on all the different items, but when you talk to these, when you talk to participants in the study, they know what they're talking about, because when you ask them who do you value the most for advice, only 10% of them say the dog, obviously, because the dog probably they recognize that the dog is not a very good source of instrumental social support. So this is the results that we collected for the first sample. On average, 74% of people ranked the dog first in terms of social support, perceived social support. And now, if you include the second sample, these are preliminary results. We are still analyzing the data, incorporating more interviews at this point. But we wanted to advance some of the data that we are already collecting. In the second population, as you can see, the dog is ranked first in 68% by 68% of participants. Is a smaller sample yet than the first one. So what you can say here is that well, the depth of the social network is slightly better. The dog is ranked in the first place slightly worse than in the first population, but yet it becomes one of the main sources of social support. So now, if we go back to our prediction, we can say that the prediction is somehow validated, because our results suggest a high degree of commitment to the relationship, and that confirms that the person will not trade off the relationship for gaining access to shelter or accommodation, depending on which group they belong to. So what are the conclusions of our study? And then I'm going to give the floor to my colleagues to tell you exactly about the practical aspects of the project. We can say that companion animals are an essential source of social support for people experiencing homelessness, sheltered and unsheltered, as you can see from the two populations that we have been analyzing. From a functional perspective, dogs can be considered fundamental members of the family, of everybody, but in particular of people experiencing homelessness. The bond between people experiencing homelessness and their dogs should be safeguarded at all times, because otherwise they will lose probably the main element of their social networks and the main provider of social support. And this is the most important implication, that public policies should then take into account the protection of the human-animal bond between people experiencing homelessness and their dogs and their cats. And if you want to go a little bit further, we believe that companion animals as a source of fictive kinship should be included within the definition of family relationship, which is something that we are working toward with the Spanish authorities already. So thank you very much for your attention. And as I said, I'm going to hand over to Thaïs and Noe.
Thank you, Jaume.
¿Pueden ver mi pantalla?
Sí, perfectly.
Okay, perfecto.
So I'm aware that we have not a lot of time, so I will try to summarize. Okay. ¿Puedes poner la próxima diapositiva? Carol, ¿puedes poner la próxima? Ahora. Thank you. We would like to start by sharing some relevant data published in Animals Health Digital newspaper on 9 March last, which analyzes the results of the latest Voice of the Veterinary Profession survey by the British Veterinary Association. The survey reveals that 99% UK vets have visited pets that should have been seen earlier the last year. We are talking about 1 in 5 pets not receiving timely veterinary treatment due to inflation crisis. This survey has shown that a 20% increase in owners delaying veterinary visits due to financial problems. 91% of vets indicated that financial reasons were a key factor during an inflation crisis that not only affects the UK, but the whole of Europe and much of the world, including Spain and United States. Persons who reported difficulties in covering the cost of preventive veterinary care for their animal had increased compared to 2021. We are facing a real situation. People in vulnerable situations who increasingly represent our societies cannot, in many cases, guarantee the well-being of the members of their family unit, including their non-human partner. The latter should be considered by public policies as full members of the family. From this need to make visible the bond between people and the animals they live with, the Best Friend, Mejores Amigos project was born in 2016. Si puedes pasar a la próxima. Mejores Amigos, Best Friend, is a multidisciplinary project. The main objective of this project is to advise and network with social services teams of the City Council in the accompaniment and monitoring of cases of people in vulnerable situations who live with animals, which will be implemented at a national level and which we will explain it in more detail later. To summarize, for those who don't know about it, the project focuses on the following points. To ensure that homeless people, and from now people in vulnerable situations, are accepted with their animals in shelter, day centers, and social or inclusion housing. To ensure that they can stay together during the process of accessing resources. Offer technical, legal, and anthropological training to those professionals who are in contact with this profile of people and their animals, so that they have all the necessary tools at their disposal. Sorry, Carol, is the before slide yet? Thank you. To provide advice and technical and legal accompaniment in cases where the user is accompanied by an animal to social entities administration. To provide food for their animals through donations from food banks and NGOs. To provide also free veterinary care for the animals of homeless people and reduce prices for those who can prove serious financial problems. And as a novelty, we add the monitoring of cases in coordination between different areas of the council, such as social, public health, and environment, together with FAADA. And also very important, collection of data, of real data on cases of people in vulnerable situations with animals to analyze interspecies bonds and multi-species families. Now, yes, the next one. Thank you. At the relational level, it is necessary to value the bonds between people in vulnerable situations and their animals to offer accompaniment and support so that they can live as a family unit. In this sense, it is necessary to give value to these bonds and offer support with the existing technical legal tools. Post-humanist philosophy is putting on the table this new relational model, far from the heteronormative nuclear family, which is deconstructed under the gaze of critical thinking of feminist theories, which proposes relationships based on care and affective ethics. Other links are not others, and the accompaniment of social services teams must be framed in the knowledge of new social phenomena, such as new family models that include animals and interspecies bonds in vulnerable situations. Next slide, please. Thank you. To correctly analyze these bonds, we have established a protocol with different actions depending on the assessment of the bond. This protocol is newly established and allows us to offer a response adapted to each case. We have established 3 different scenarios: when the bond is positive, when the bond is negative, and when the bond is unclear. When the bond is positive, the action on our part and in collaboration with the social services team of the Council is to help and offer the necessary support for access to the resources that best respond to their situation. This means veterinary services, access to accommodation with the animal, food bank, legal advice, and so on. When the bond is not known to be positive or negative, and there are doubts about it, police inspection is requested to determine whether is it positive or negative in collaboration with the local administration. If the final assessment of the inspection is that the bond is negative, we will work together with the municipality, public administration, and the Animal Protection Office to save the animals. The negative bond arises from the human towards the actions of the human towards the animal and its use and exploitation for begging, Noah syndrome, or breeding, for fighting, or instrumentalization. Next one. Thank you, Carol. Throughout almost 7 years of the project in Barcelona and Catalonia, we have managed to accompany more than 400 homeless people with their animals to access different municipal resources, veterinary care, medical follow-up to respond to any need, networking with their referents in social services. The project attends to approximately 1,500 requests per year between private individuals and cases managed by social services. We would like to highlight that for the first time, public policies are committed to the care and accompaniment of people with their animals through a budget earmarked for this purpose. This means that public administration is committed to caring for the bond between people and in vulnerable situations and their animals, responding to their needs. Okay, next one. Thank you. And thanks to the commitment of the Ministry of Social Affairs and Agenda 2030 to the project, we will be able from now to accompany any cases of people in vulnerable situations beyond those who are homeless throughout Spain. This means that we will be able to offer accompaniment to the teams of social workers in any of the more than 8,000 municipalities in Spain. The profile of people assisted with his or her animal is also broadened. Any person in a situation of vulnerability assessed as such by the municipal social services teams will be able to opt for the accompaniment offered by the project. What accompaniment we will offer at national level We will accompany the social services in the case of people in vulnerable situation, training and support for social services teams, access and follow-up veterinary care, and economic resources. It is also very important that this territorial and profile extension will allow us to collect real data for the research we are carrying out with Jaume Fatjó and the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona to reinforce it and draw new conclusions about the bonds between people in vulnerable situation and their animals. Yes, thank you. Yes, we share the case of Manuel and his 3 life companions, Sheila, Sheilita, and Rambo. Unfortunately, Sheila left us recently. She was very old. Manuel was the person who lived the longest on the streets of Barcelona, 17 years. He only claimed to have a roof over his head where he could live with his animals. And so he proved. He has been living in a village house for almost 4 years. Maybe we can play the video from the slide. He's speaking in Spanish, but it's translated at English.
Carol, we can't hear the audio.
Yeah. How do I share the audio?
When you hit share screen, there's an option to share the audio as well.
Sorry,
I might have to stop the share and start over. Share screen. It just says share screen, share sound. There we go. Share.
Rambo, Celita y la mamá que está por ahí, Sheila. Lo primero, te lo he dicho que lo primero no la quería, pero después, cuando la tuve, ya ves. Le debo la vida a ellos, ¿vale? Que tengo 56 años, y debo la vida a ellos, nada más. Y me siento muy orgulloso. Eso es lo que tiene que aprender la gente de los animales. Dan compañía, dan amistad, te defienden, te ponen y lo que quieran. Te dan lo que quieran ellos. Y jamás en la vida te destrozarán. Encima te defienden, pero nunca te darán la espalda. Son mis niños, son mi vida, ellos, ¿vale? Son muy fuertes para mí, ¿me entiendes? Son lo que tengo, no tengo nada más, ¿me entiendes? Yo creo que ha sido un sitio para ellos, estar a gusto con ellos, nada más es lo que deseo. Y pagándolo yo cada mes, no me importa pagarlo, el sitio donde esté con ellos. Es lo que quiero, no quiero nada más. Me importan ellos ahora, más que todo lo que tengo yo. Yo daría todo lo que tengo por ellos ahora mismo, y sé que no tengo nada. ¿Vale? Y daría todo, hasta mi vida lo daría por ellos.
Thank you. So the last slide is some findings. If you prefer, maybe we can open the questions. I know that we go with little.
Bueno, gracias a todos por su participación, de verdad. Siempre me encanta oírlos ustedes hablar y ver el trabajo fantástico que están haciendo en España. So we're going to open it up to questions. Christine, we have about 9 minutes.
Yes, and first, before we even start with questions, I just want to thank you, Jaume and Thaïs and Noe. It's really wonderful to hear about the growth of your program and also to hear about the results from the study and how much things have really moved forward. And it is so impressive to see how you're government has really seen the value of your work. And I'm just going to pause there for translation purposes.
Sí, que estamos tan impresionados con todo el trabajo que están haciendo y también ver cómo su gobierno nacional realmente ha visto el valor de su trabajo y ha invertido en lo que están haciendo. Y para nosotros eso es una gran inspiración.
Muchas
Okay.
gracias. Thank you very much.
So you all are signed into Zoom, not into Whova. So you can't see what's going on in the chat in Whova. So I just want to describe to you, Jaume, when you were going over your study, people were basically saying how much the results of your study resonated with them because they are personally living the results of your study and they feel that bond with their animals. And it really makes sense to them. So thank you for sharing that. One question that we have for you, Jaume, about your study. So you said 1,000 people in Barcelona are experiencing homelessness. 80 of them have dogs. It has been a long-standing question in the United States. How do we actually count people experiencing homelessness with animals? And so how did Barcelona arrive at that number? And I'm sorry, Carol, I went on too long without letting you translate.
Básicamente lo que Christine está preguntando es, aquí en los Estados Unidos tenemos muchos problemas en saber cómo contar a la gente sin hogar en la calle. Y el estudio que usted hizo dice que hay más o menos 1,000 personas sin hogar y que 80, más o menos, si entendí bien, tienen mascotas, tienen perros. ¿Cómo lo hicieron ustedes? ¿Cómo adecuadamente contaron a la gente en la calle o sin hogar? Está en mute. Ask to unmute.
Ahora.
Yeah, no,
Vale.
okay.
¿Contesto yo, Jaume?
Thanks, Carol. Well, the thing is that I'm going to hand over to Thaïs because we had already the work done, but I think that you can explain because they did a very interesting sort of I would say parallel project to come up with those numbers. Thaïs or Noe, you can explain that if you want.
Bueno, lo voy a explicar en castellano, ¿vale? Sí, Carol,
Voy a
Jaume,
hacer lo más que pueda para traducir y si no me ayuda, Jaume.
Sí.
Hay 2 vías y una tercera se está reclamando. La primera es, una vez al año salen voluntarios a la calle en una salida que se coordina con todas las ONGs de sinhogarismo de Barcelona, donde hay más de 1,000 voluntarios y se cuenta a estas personas, se llama la noche del recuento. Básicamente consiste en salir a contar personas por la noche. La otra vía es la de la recogida de datos que hemos hecho nosotras. ¿Quieres traducir, Carol, el primer punto?
Sí, yo lo puse en el chat. So once a year they do outreach sort of the way we all do the point in time count. They literally go out there and count people.
And one thing because Carol, I think it's important to say that it's amazing when they do that. They coordinate all the associations in the city working for people experiencing homelessness, and you have more than 1,000, around 1,000 volunteers around the city counting people. It's a massive intervention. If you take into account that, well, just to give you an idea, Barcelona is 1.5 million people, so you have 1,000 people just doing that job in one particular night. That's really amazing. Yeah.
Luego hay una segunda vía que es la que hemos recogido desde Fundación FAADA, que es básicamente cada vez que llega un caso a nuestras oficinas por parte de un particular, un trabajador social o una persona en situación de vulnerabilidad o de calle, están en la calle, nosotros bajamos a conocerlo y hemos ido recontando uno por uno todos los casos que nos llegan y actualizando. Y hay una tercera vía que es la del recuento desde los servicios sociales, que es la petición que estamos haciendo en este momento. que se tomen datos desde los servicios sociales, que esa es la vía más difícil.
La segunda, ¿me la puedes explicar más o menos? So for the record, the third one, they're basically doing account from all of their social service programs. So it's like actual people served coming in. The second one, I'm asking for a little more clarity. So la segunda, cuando alguien llega a donde, al veterinario o...
No, como ya estamos de referente de todo lo que tiene que ver con personas en situación de vulnerabilidad con animales, directamente nos llaman a nosotros cuando hay un caso en la calle con una persona. De manera que nosotros ya lo conocemos porque tenemos unas listas conjuntamente con el ayuntamiento y los servicios sociales y añadimos y quitamos casos y los vamos actualizando. Pero cada vez que entra un caso nuevo nos entra a nosotras, lo contemplamos y lo compartimos con el ayuntamiento.
So the second way is actually through vet services. So whenever a person shows up at the veterinary office and they believe it's someone experiencing homelessness, they immediately bring in the FAADA team to come in and do an intake. And if they're not known to them, and if they are known to them, then they continue to build that work. So it's 3 avenues of sort of doing that counting. Gracias.
Gracias.
Amazing. So that brings me to our next question here. So I just want to recap for people who may have missed a very important point of their presentation, and that this is a massive undertaking. So the successful pilot in Barcelona was with just people experiencing homelessness with animals, coordinating care for their animals, and then also for the person and having them access social services. Now it's being expanded to all of Spain, and not just people experiencing homelessness. Their program is being expanded to all people in vulnerable situations. That is massive. Congratulations again, because I'm just so blown away.
Felicidades solamente por lo increíble y lo grande que es el programa. Nosotros hemos estado siguiendo todo lo que han estado haciendo, y para nosotros es cómo han podido incorporar lo que hacen en todos los niveles y los diferentes sistemas que tienen en la comunidad y en los niveles del gobierno. Para nosotros, de verdad, felicidades.
Gracias. Sí. Estamos ahora preparando todo, en breve empezamos a desplegarlo, estamos ya entrando en otras comunidades y tenemos que trabajar de una manera muy sistemática porque son 8.000 municipios, con lo cual vamos a tener que formar muchísimo a los servicios sociales para que sepan, solo nos demanden cuando realmente tengan un caso que no sepan gestionar. Lo que vamos a hacer es dar un servicio más a los servicios sociales para que ellos puedan resolverlos y acompañarlos. En realidad somos 2 personas para todo esto, con lo cual vamos a ver cómo lo gestionamos. Pero bueno, estamos súper contentas. O sea que la verdad es que sí, que estamos muy sorprendidas. Sí.
She's sharing about just sort of the expansion and the next thing they're going to do, because it's 8,000 municipalities, and they're trying to be able to provide that service to everyone, and also sort of providing the guiding principles of, when to call them and when they can get involved. But she's just like, we'll see how it goes. But again, 8,000 municipalities.
Can she give us some examples of what kinds of populations fall into vulnerable populations, but also about the funding? So you got funding from your national government to do this. We have very few examples of that in the United States, where the government provides grants on a federal level to support human and animal safety nets. We have really maybe one example of that, and that is our domestic violence grant program that's run through the Department of Justice. So what was it like for you having that conversation with your government? How did you get them to buy in?
Well, before they say that, let me just add something, Christine, that they are very, very, very persistent. So I think that the government finally they gave up. So I think it No, I was joking. I was joking.
Vamos a darle lo que quieren para que ya dejen de molestarnos. Bueno, para Thaïs y Noe, lo que ella está preguntando es, bueno, uno, para clarificar, ¿qué consideran una población vulnerable en España? Y la número dos, que esto lo hemos hablado hasta el año pasado cuando estábamos preparándonos para la conferencia, es, obviamente recibieron dinero del gobierno federal y ustedes. Han recibido más dinero de otros niveles de gobierno. Para nosotros nada más hay un departamento del gobierno federal, que es el que protege a las mujeres de violencia doméstica. Eso no hay mucho. Entonces, ¿cómo tuvieron esas conversaciones? ¿Cómo les vendiste la idea? Y también fueron persistentes, pero ¿cómo vendieron esa idea para que de verdad lo vieran como un servicio público y que tenían que invertir su dinero para este programa, porque era para de beneficio del público?
Bueno, tuvimos la suerte que el partido político que entró tenía una línea muy animalista, muy activista, y está en coalición son dos partidos, uno más de centro y uno más verde, no sé cómo decir, ¿no? Más sensible con todo el tema de los animales. Y justamente este partido ya estuvo observando. ¿Quieres traducir, Carol? Que luego no sé cómo lo he dicho o sigo. Sigo.
The political party that is now in power was very animal friendly. So that definitely was one thing that helped.
Sí. Entonces, se fijaron en el modelo de Barcelona y se tenía que replicar en Madrid, en la capital. Y es un sistema muy barato, muy barato. Es un sistema que básicamente consiste en entrenar a los trabajadores sociales y acompañarlos para que no estén solos. Es muy barato. Entonces,
so they were trying to replicate from the program in Barcelona and replicate it to Spain. And basically she's like, this is cheap. This is inexpensive to do. It's basically sort of providing like a shadowing or a companion team approach to the social workers that are doing the work.
Entonces, el modelo en Barcelona estuvo funcionando 5 años solo con dinero privado y muy poco dinero, muy poco, poquísimo, y se cubrieron todos los casos con éxito y el ayuntamiento vio que era un proyecto muy barato, muy eficaz y muy novedoso. Y nos dotaron, a la pregunta que hace Cristín, nos dotaron este año pasado de recursos en Barcelona y automáticamente del Ministerio también de Asuntos Sociales, con lo cual en este momento estamos recibiendo 2 subvenciones importantes de administraciones públicas.
So I'll start with the end. So as of right now, they just recently got the announcement that they've gotten 2 grants from the public administration al nivel nacional o en Barcelona solamente?
En Barcelona una y a nivel nacional otra.
Yeah. So what she had said is the work in Barcelona had been happening for 5 years and it was privately funded and it was like no money. Like we all know how to sort of run programs inexpensively. And I think because the program was so inexpensive, but it had such positive results of everyone they helped, like there were all positive outcomes. And because it was also so inexpensive to do, I think, and their persistence as well, they were able to expand, replicate it, and now, you know, their public government is investing money into this program.
Y perdón, Carol, contestando a qué tipo de vulnerables que preguntaba Cristín, qué perfiles de vulnerables, tenemos sin hogarismo, personas en situación de sin techo, personas en situación de sin hogar, víctimas de violencia machista, personas mayores vulnerables que están solas y sin recursos y en general cualquier perfil de vulnerabilidad que entre en los servicios sociales, nosotros vamos a acompañar a ese trabajador social.
Okay. So to clarify on Christine's question on what's a vulnerable population, it's sort of like ours. It's anyone experiencing homelessness, all sorts, DV, seniors, and low income. And she basically said anyone who comes in that's in a vulnerable point, in a vulnerable state, like That's what's considered vulnerable.
Well, I can't wait to have you back in the future to hear about even more results and more success that I am sure you will all have. Congratulations again. There is a lot of activity in the Q&A and Huva about getting copies of your slides, if you're willing to share them, and then also your study, Jaume.
No problem. Yeah, well, we are now in the process. We are now in the process of getting the first one, the one that we did in the first population. We are now in the process of getting that published. But in the meantime, I'm totally happy to share the presentation with you.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, Carol, I'm going to give it to you to close us out.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. Jaume, Noe, Thaïs, estamos inspirados por su éxito. En el chat estamos diciendo que todos nos vamos a vivir para Barcelona. Lo queremos visitar. Yo me voy desde que consiga. Bueno, y de verdad, todos los años queremos saber qué están haciendo porque de verdad son una inspiración para todos nosotros y su programa es fenomenal y de verdad muchísimas gracias a ustedes. Hemos aprendido bastante.
Muchas gracias a vosotros.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.